Welcome to RAIN, the Real Estate Investor Growth Network with your hostess, Jen Josie. Join like-minded real estate investors and accelerate your business towards greatness. You will hear step-by-step strategies for success, interviews with real estate rock stars, and we will dig deep into past projects where we bear it all, including the good, the bad, and some just plain ugly. So get excited. Here's the bestower of badassery herself, the real Jen Josie. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi, and welcome back. I'm Jen Josie, creator of RAIN, the Real Estate Investor Growth Network. Whoop, whoop. On today's episode, we have a guest that will be sharing one of their past projects. We will let you decide if it was good or bad or just plain ugly. But before we begin, here is today's badassery bestowment, my little badass gift to you. Today's topic is: the first impression is the only impression. When you are getting ready to list your renovated property, do not skimp on the exterior. Buyers will judge your home before they walk through the door. You never have a second chance to make a first impression. It's important to make people feel warm, welcome, and safe as they approach the house. Use bright entry lights and upgrade the house numbers. Spruce up your home's exterior with inexpensive shrubs and brightly colored flowers. A few bags of mulch can go a long way. Oh, and don't forget the welcome home mat. You will absolutely get 100% return on any money you put into your property's curb appeal. Now, on to today's episode of the Real Estate Investor Growth Network podcast. We have with us my new friend, Jennifer Perkins. She's already awesome because she's named Jennifer. Jennifer is a real estate investor and developer. Her current focus is on self-storage acquisitions and development. She and her husband work together as a team, and they have experience in flipping, BRRRing, wholesaling, new construction, land development, self-storage, and most recently, mobile homes. One of Jennifer's goals is to add over 500,000 net rentable square feet to her self-storage portfolio in the next 5 years. Jennifer's biggest achievement to date is building a 250-door self-storage facility with, get this, no partners, no experience, and no money down. So I can't wait to hear all about it. Welcome to the show, Jennifer Perkins.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you for having me.
Yay. And this is your first podcast. I'm popping her podcast cherry.
That's right. My first.
And when we first signed on, she's got her makeup done. She looks so nice. And I just literally left a project. I'm still sweating. And I was like, oh, there's no video. She's like, I know. She's just perfect all the time. I can tell.
Yeah.
So we just met each other in Vegas, and I don't know too much about you, but you were so sweet when you introduced yourself. Do you want to tell the story?
So I had to apologize because I almost knocked Jen down at the bar and nearly spilled her wine on her. So my introduction was, hello, I am not a jerk. I was in a hurry to take a call from my son. And I am so sorry.
So you bumped into me, and I don't even think I noticed, because I was like, oh, okay, well, thank you. And trust me, you did not spill a drop of that wine, because I was feeling it that next day. So, well, welcome. Tell me a little bit about you. I'm in Raleigh, and you are near Nashville, Tennessee. So give me a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so I live just west of Nashville. Me, my husband, my 3 kids, and dog.
3 kids.
Yes, 7, 9, and 15. Yes, I grew up here in Dixon, which is 2 counties over from Nashville, and I lived here until I was 18. I lived in Germany for about 6 years.
Where?
And then I moved back. So in Ansbach, which is in Bavaria, southeast Germany.
Verstehen Sie?
It's not very good. I prefer English.
Thank you to my high school German teacher. That's about all I got. So, yeah, we were in Bavaria, gosh, about 6 years ago. We got a cuckoo clock, which I hear people in Bavaria like roll their eyes at the tour saying, where do I get a cuckoo clock? But yeah, we were one of those idiots, but very
yeah,
neat.
The Black Forest is where those are made. Yeah, yes. I've been there also. So yeah, I worked for the Army over there. I wasn't in the Army, but I worked for the Army over there. And then I moved back here, met my husband, had some kids, got married.
In that order?
I worked in that order. Yeah, I
had kids and then you got married.
Yes.
I was joking.
Wanted to make it
wow.
permanent first.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, and then, I've worked in a lot of different industries, from working from the Army, selling insurance, all kinds of different things. I have a master's in business, but ultimately I've always been passionate about real estate and went full time in 2019 was when I quit my job. I was doing real estate and working, but I quit my W-2 and went full time February of 2019.
So what was the first thing that you got involved with in real estate?
Yeah, the first thing I did that, I would call an investment was house hacking, buying a house of my own, fixing it up, making a profit. And I'll tell in my story what we're going to talk about, kind of how I used my first house hack to get me into my first self-storage project.
Excellent. Well, I am ready to dive right in. We are going to talk about that project where you built 250 doors of self-storage facility, and you had no partners, no experience, and no money down. I can't wait to hear about this. So give me a little description. And this isn't a typical past project that you will hear on other interviews, but how did you find this project?
It was a process. There were so many different things that could have stopped us from moving forward. So it wasn't like I was looking to get into self-storage. I found an opportunity and I'm like, what can I do with this? And I asked around and I looked to see what was possible. And that's kind of how our business is. We're always looking at properties and seeing like, what's the highest and best use for this? We want to be focused on self-storage primarily, but we're also, like just last week or a couple weeks ago, bought a mobile home park. Just today we put 2 lots under contract to build custom homes on it. We're looking to see, how do we solve a problem here? So that's what happened here. I bought an old farm and it became a self-storage facility.
Oh, wow. And when you say you asked around, does that mean that you have coaches that are experts in this area? How did you get advice on how to move forward with this deal?
So yeah, I do have coaches. That's not who I asked. I asked the town, the mayor, the real estate brokers, people who are experienced in development. If you had this property, what would you do? And I kept hearing self-storage. So frankly, if they were saying grocery store, we'd be talking about a grocery store right now.
And that's so smart, because we were actually looking at a piece of land, and us with just, real estate and doing either new builds or flipping houses, whatever, I'm always only thinking houses. And when we went to the town to talk about it was just 5 acres, and they're like, do not build any more houses. Cause I guess the roads were, just 2-lane, and it was just getting very congested. So we walked away from it. I didn't even think to say, well, what are you looking for that land? Right. That is so smart. Wow. I love that. All right. So you found the property. It was a farm. Did you what'd you have to do to the land?
So the situation was, I lived in a house that, I was fixing up. I wasn't really ready to sell it, but there was this opportunity where somebody that we knew was going to be selling their house and farm. And it's actually a farm I used to go out to as a kid. I would help feed the cows. They had rabbits, pigs, all kinds of things. So, I knew the family that had owned it. The wife had passed away. The husband wanted to retire and move to Florida. So he had put a for sale by owner sign in the yard. And it wasn't a great deal. There really wasn't a lot of equity in what he was asking, and it needed a lot of work. I mean, they had smoked inside for like 50 years. There had been a squirrel living in the house, because he was only staying there part-time. So it had not been taken care of very well. And the farm was just not operable as a farm. Everything, the barn to the fence needed to be taken down. So
were there still cows and pigs and stuff there?
No.
Oh,
So
okay.
fortunately, all the animals, I'm sure, live their happy lives and have moved on. But it just basically was like a 1,500 square foot ranch style home on two 4 acre lots, which were combined into 8 acres for the tax purposes. And so for sale by owner, I already had a house. I was going to have to sell my house to be able to purchase it. So that's what I did. The unique thing about it is I couldn't get a loan to buy this house. So,
Interesting.
yeah.
Why not? I'm just because it was just like overpriced or
No, it was me. I had bad credit.
oh.
So that was awful. I have this house and it has a little bit of equity in it, just enough that I could probably pay off my credit cards and put a down payment on this home, except I can't get a loan because I had co-signed for somebody and they didn't pay their debt. And I was still trying to get that figured out, couldn't get a mortgage. So I had to get seller financing. So
So Jennifer, you said that you house hacked. So you had your first house and then you sold the house you were living in. So then where did you move to?
So I moved into that squirrel smokehouse with my kids. All right. And literally, this is awful. We had to buy this chemical from one of those fire remediation companies and spray it on the walls to scrub the smoke and nicotine off the walls to make it livable. So I had to move into that house because that was my only way to get that property. And self-storage was on my mind as far as what it could be, but there were so many different things. Like I still had to go through rezoning and figure out financing and figure out like how do you even do self-storage. So
Yeah.
I didn't even know if I could do that.
So what do you do to turn it into self-storage? I mean, it's a farm, so it's I guess zoned as residential, or is it? I don't know what a farm would be zoned as.
It's zoned as agricultural, or that's what it
Agricultural.
was zoned. Yeah, which is like the lowest level zoning and not even residential. But I knew it was on a highly trafficked highway. And I really actually considered having a farm and, turning it back into a farm. But I'm thinking, cows, highway, have a job, like that just doesn't seem realistic. So talked to some people, learned about self-storage, and to kind of back up a little bit, as I was trying to figure out if self-storage would work, I had to figure out if it would even work if I could buy this property. So I'm talking to the seller and I'm like, I want to buy this at the price that you want it. He wanted $170,000. And, I'll sell my house, I'll pay the down payment, but I need you to carry back the note for 2 years. Just give me 2 years to fix the property up. And then I promise I'll refinance you out. And so he finally agreed, as is, no repairs. And then the day of closing, he's like, yeah, I'm just not really sure about this. All right. I had already sold my house. So I had to go pick him up and take him to closing. We had to sit down with the title attorneys and all get on the same page and let him know, like, hey, if she doesn't pay this note, you can take the house back. It's worth this, she's going to put all this work into it. And so he signed and I had a fixer-upper to move into.
So I am not great at this creative financing. So explain to the listeners and me while you're at it, how you do seller financing.
Yeah. So at the time, I didn't know. I didn't have a clue. It just was an idea. Maybe he'll let me make payments to him until I can get a bank note, get my credit situation straightened out. And fortunately, I work with a really good title company who works with investors all the time. And I tell them all the time, I'm like, this is what I want to do. How do we do it? And then they put together the paperwork to make it happen. So they put together a promissory note and it just lays out the terms that we agreed to. In this situation, we had agreed to I don't know, it was like $1,000 a month, no interest payments. We didn't even discuss interest. He just wanted to make sure that he was getting payments. And then in 2 years, it would be a 2-year balloon where the entire balance would be due. If I didn't pay it back, he'd be able to take the house back.
And did you have to pay anything down, like a large chunk down?
So I did. I put down, I'm trying to remember, it was like it was $11,000 is what I put down. Yeah.
So you basically got a farm for $11,000 down and $1,000 a month for the first 2 years. And you have those 2 years to renovate it, turn it into whatever you're going to turn it into. And then when you I guess, refinance or something, that's when you're going to pay him back with what's called a balloon payment.
Yeah, so the balloon payment would be when it's all due in full by, but the refinance, which I actually did in 10 months instead of 24 months, which is what I could have done. I got it done in 10 months, gave him all of his money back, and I took out another $17,000, which is what I used for the couple of out-of-pocket expenses I needed for my self-storage facility, which was like a feasibility study and an appraisal.
Wow, that's so important. And I want to also go back to the fact that you're talking about your title company and that they are used to working with investors, because a lot of listeners out there, they think, oh, I'll just go to, where I did my closing for my personal home, because I know those people. I developed a relationship with them, but they don't understand all the intricate nuances to doing a transaction for an investor. So I'm so glad you brought that up. And what a great resource for you to say to them, hey, this is what I want to do. And they'll like, oh, well, let's do this. And so that, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. So you get the property, and it's going to be $170,000, correct? You put some money down, you're making $1,000 a month payment. And you said that there was no interest in there. So you literally 10 months later was able to pay off this $170,000.
Yes. So I paid off, which it was 159 because I put down 11, the down payment. And then I took cash out from that loan to use for some of the out-of-pocket expenses I needed for the self-storage development. And in that time, not only was I fixing the house up so that it would appraise better, with the paint. I did nothing major, just cleaned it up, made it look nicer, did some maintenance stuff that was deferred. But also in that period of time, what I did was so there was 4 acres and vacant land next to 4 acres in the house. It was 2 parcels of land there. The 4 acres that was vacant, I took and rezoned it commercial.
Gotcha.
So whenever I rezoned it commercial and I did the refinance, I took that commercial land out of the loan. So the refinance only was for the house and 4 acres, not for the house and 8 acres. Then I owned 4 commercial acres free and clear.
Wow.
So
this is mind blowing to me. That is so smart. Who guided you to do that? I mean, that's like, I wouldn't think to do that.
Honestly, at that point in my life, I was like, holy cow, I just created all of this equity out of
thin air,
a little bit of sweat equity and a little bit of risk, right? Because I could have went to rezoning and it wasn't incredibly easy. I mean, a lot of people were against it. When you go to rezone for self-storage, people are going to come out from all over and let you know how they feel about what you're doing to that beautiful farmland that they like to look at when they drive back and forth to work every day. Mm-hmm. Even though they don't pay taxes on it and they don't maintain it, they have an opinion about what you should do with your property. So I learned that really quickly. And they don't know until you're done, like, what is it really going to look like? They think self-storage is the C-class gravel, with barbed wire fencing, cockroach infested thing. But self-storage of today is not. It's a beautiful product. It's more like retail frontage. And that's what our end product looks like. And so now it's much easier for me to do something like that because they know I care about the community and I build a beautiful product. But going through the rezoning then was difficult. And a lot of people didn't like me just in that local area because they thought I was bringing something ugly to the area, which Fortunately I did not. And now we're friends again, which is great.
Awesome. And so you have these 8 acres, you split off, you have 4. So now you can focus on the 4 acres and you can build this self-storage facility. But before we get to that, what happened with the farmhouse? Are you still living there, or what did you do with the farmhouse side?
So I did live there for about 3 years. I lived there. Now I live down the road and my mom actually lives there.
Oh,
She's
nice.
on disability. And so she stays there and she just goes and walks the storage for me every day and sends me a report and says, everything's looking good.
Perfect. All right. So how does one build a self-storage facility?
So then the next issue is money, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I have to pay for this construction loan for a storage facility, but I don't have any money. So what do I do? And what I learned is I could use the equity from that land that I had taken out of the refinance, rezoned commercial. When it was agricultural, it was worth probably about $40,000, $50,000 as agricultural 4-acre lot. You could build a house on it, put a farm on it, whatever. When I rezoned it commercial and got it appraised, then it was worth $220,000.
Wow.
Yeah, so I took that 40,000 in equity and pushed it up to 220. It cost me the cost of a boundary survey, which at that time was pretty inexpensive. It was like $400 or $500, and then a rezoning application, which here was about $200 to create that equity. And I used that as my down payment, my equity injection for the construction loan.
So as someone who flips houses, and you've flipped houses in the past, how would you equate this to like determining an after repair? It's not even after repair value because you're building something new, but like how are you calculating numbers in your head of what the value is going to be for this property?
So the appraisal tells you that. You get an as-is appraisal, which tells you what's the vacant land worth, an as-built, which is all the same appraisal. It gives you 3 figures: as is, what it's worth; as built, without having any of the units rented, what is it worth; and then stabilized, what's it worth. And then they're going to take 80% or whatever their parameters are of, the as built or stabilized, and that's the maximum amount that they're going to lend to you.
So you took the money out of the equity of the land, and then you built a storage facility, correct?
Well, the land is what I used as my equity. I put that parcel down as my equity.
Gotcha. And how much does it cost to build a storage facility?
Well, it's a lot more now than it was then because the price of everything has obviously risen quite a bit. But it depends on what you're going to build. I built for phase 1, that was my phase 1, all drive-up units, non-climate controlled. And back then, you could do it for much cheaper. I think that project all in was about 1.1 some odd million is what it cost. It's a lot more now, unfortunately.
So how do you fund that to build it?
So I took out an SBA 7A loan.
Gotcha.
So SBA is that's not the only loan I could have taken out. I could have taken out, a conventional commercial loan, but they probably would have had an issue with me not having experience, right? They would have wanted me to partner with somebody with experience, and the equity was there, the deal was there. So the SBA 7A loan, well, you don't have to have experience, but you do have to be a person of character. You have to have good credit. By then I had my credit situation fixed, and the deal has to make sense. So they're not really looking at your DTI, DSCR, all that stuff. They're looking at the deal itself. Is this deal going to support itself? And you have to set it up in a way that you're not the one putting in sweat equity. I even had to have a budget for an on-site manager that wasn't me, that had planned to pay to manage the facility. And they also make you put in there the money that you're going to use to make your interest payments until you're stabilized, and the money that you're going to pay the operating expenses, because obviously I don't have reserves set aside to stabilize this facility. It all goes into that loan.
So listeners, you heard her say before her personal credit, she couldn't buy this $170,000 farm. And now here she's getting, how much did you get approved for? 1 point what?
It ended up being 1.2 million.
And because they were looking at the deal, not necessarily you and your finances. Right. So huge difference there and that's just totally flipping the coin, and it changes everything because now it's the deal that's the most important. So thank you for bringing that up. All right. I have all these questions here for regular flips. And so we talked about financing. Were you going to list this or sell it when you were finished with it? What was your end game?
I was just trying to become a full-time investor. So what I actually ended up doing is the day we opened the facility is the day I quit my job and I became the manager. Nice. I took a pay cut. I wasn't making a whole lot more money than that. I was probably making $30-something thousand, and my budget was $26,000 salary to pay my manager to manage the facility. And I became that person, and that became my salary.
Wow.
And so I worked there, and I rented out those units, and I did that until I learned that I could manage it remotely and I wouldn't have to be there all the time. And then I started doing other income producing activities, as a full-time investor, so that I could run it remotely. And then now I have a management company and a part-time manager that works there.
And mom walks it from time to time.
My mom walks it from time to time, and my stepmom is actually my manager there. So it provides jobs for my family. So I never really planned to sell it. It has multiple phases. So we're working on the expansion right now. But the goal always was just to solve a problem for the community. We needed storage. That's what I did, provided a solution for the community. I actually don't even take any kind of pay myself from that facility, but it provides a job for my mom, for my stepmom, solution for the community. And it's just something wonderful to work on. You know, I've just really enjoyed the project.
Well, this is fantastic. Jennifer, what a great idea. How could, say, the listeners out there, how could they get into building or buying self-storage facilities? Like what would be a piece of advice for them?
You know, I learned the hard way. I had to figure all this stuff out one mistake at a time. And after I got into the self-storage community, which is not a big community, it's a niche community, I realized that there's a lot of different training that I could have taken that would have fast-tracked me to success. For instance, Tracte, which is spelled TRACHTE, is a metal building supplier, and they give free classes throughout the country on self-storage development. You don't have to pay anything to go to these classes. I go every single year when they're in Nashville. I go just to hear if there's anything new that they're teaching. And they also have calculators on their website where you can take like a 2-acre site, for instance. If you want to build all drive-up units, calculate like what's the gross amount of square footage and setbacks and that sort of thing. So, you know, just use your search engine and search for self-storage resources, and then also Facebook groups. There's plenty of Facebook groups. Get out there and ask questions.
Definitely. And you mentioned phases. So how many phases have you completed?
So I've just completed the phase 1. I'm working on phase 2, which is a 2-story climate controlled building, another 3 non-climate buildings, and then 68 parking spots. And what I do is I create parking areas for like RVs, boats, etc., which is like a flat gravel pad, which will be a future expansion spot. So where we're going to have those 68 parking spaces will be a phase 3, which will be well on down the road, because it'll take about 3 years to stabilize our second phase.
It is just the gift that keeps on giving. I love this idea. So any crazy stories on any, like, you know, people living in storage units or anything nutty like that? Anything crazy left behind?
Oh, yeah. I don't know if you want me to talk about it on this podcast, but people have left me prizes in their storage units that are things that you can't talk about while eating. So I don't know if you talk about them on
Give
podcast.
me a hint. I mean, that's good stuff.
Well, let's just say if the bathroom's closed and you have a cooler in your storage unit and you didn't pay your rent, you might leave a prize for the owner.
Wow. Oh my goodness. And what is the unit rent?
Average is about $100
a month.
And the average size is about a 10 by 15, 10 by 10 to 10 by 15.
And they do their own locks, or you have a special key for them? I mean, I don't know anything about them.
So I was one of the first people I knew that had a mostly remotely operated facility, because, you know, I wanted to be out doing other things and not sitting in the office. I mean, maybe 1 or 2 people maximum today of a day will even call into the facility, much less visit it. So can you imagine spending 8 hours a day sitting there doing nothing? So the way I have it is, you know, send people to the website, the Google ads, send them to the website. The website is amazing. It's fast. It only takes a few clicks to rent your storage unit. And then we give you a free lock, so that once you get there, you're not scrambling, oh, wait, where's the nearest Walmart or dollar store so I can get me a lock? It's there for you for free. It's one of the most secure type of locks that they have, and it's uniquely keyed. I don't have access to it. And so you can get to your unit, move your stuff in, and move yourself out without ever, talking to a person or meeting a person in the office.
And what's the upkeep to maintain a storage facility?
You know, every facility has to have some sort of boots on the ground. So you can't totally remotely operate the facility. And that's where my stepmom comes in. She comes in there, and it really probably is about 3 hours of man hours that is actually needed. She'll clean out units as they need to be cleaned, which is just sweep and mop, We have a third party that does the pest control, so we're not responsible for that. We have a third party that does the lawn maintenance, so we don't have to worry about that. So the main thing is going through every day, where my mom walks through, checks all the locks and everything, make sure nothing unusual has happened. And then my stepmom going in and just cleaning out units as they need to be cleaned is what someone has to be there for.
All right. So we typically do the end of the project and we go over final numbers, but this is an ongoing project for you. But are you making a lot of profit right now? Can you share some of those numbers with us?
The facility is doing really well. It's doing as projected. Whenever, like I said, the land was worth about $220,000 as it was just vacant commercial land. And before that, it was worth about $40,000 agricultural. The appraisal as at that time, it was done in like 2017 or 18 was when the appraisal was done, said that as stabilized, I think was maybe 1.9 million or something like that. Today, it would appraise closer to as is like 2.5 million. And then we'll put another 3.5 million into the expansion. And then as stabilized, which is another 3 years from now, it should be worth about 10 million.
Oh my goodness. Wow. That is fantastic. I appreciate you sharing that. Since you have started this project, are there any like major takeaways that you're going to do things differently now in the different phases, or anything you want to share with the listeners?
Yeah, I have learned a ton just through making mistakes. So like everyone, I spend a lot more time poring over the site plan and the details and making sure that all the details are in there. And if I have a question or something is concerning, I just trusted the experts, the other subcontractors or contractors to do the right thing. I don't anymore. I stop and I say, we need to figure this out. Like, what is the answer? We cannot just, move forward with this without knowing what's the solution to this problem. And so I'm a lot more proactive than I used to be, a lot less trusting, because, a lot of people have just done what they had to do to get paid and move on. And it's left me with problems to deal with.
Well, that is some very wise words of wisdom there. So thank you for sharing that. Thanks for sharing this project. What an awesome money making, your future is just boom. And you're paying someone to sit there, and yet it's just growing and growing and growing. And so smart, Jennifer. Thank you for sharing that. So the second half of the podcast is what makes you a badass. And I believe you are a badass for getting into this, no money down, doing everything on your own, no experience. So I use the acronym BADASS, and the first letter is book. What is a book that's made a huge difference in your life?
So I always have to go back to the first real estate book I ever read. It's probably not the most impactful one, but it was a turning point for me. It was back in 2006. I wasn't even a reader at the time, but I was buying a book from the bestsellers list because I had a long flight when I lived in Germany, flying back and forth. And so I thought, this is either going to be entertaining or it's going to put me to sleep, and either is fine. And it was called Why We Want You to Be Rich by Donald Trump and Robert Kiyosaki, right? And so now this was before Donald Trump, had done a lot of things that we all know about now, and was known for,
he definitely has been very successful in real estate. I cannot knock that, but go ahead, Jennifer. Sorry.
But I tell you, I didn't know who Robert Kiyosaki was, but I did know who Donald Trump was. And I thought back then, I really and truly thought that for you to have a dollar, it meant that I didn't have that dollar. That was my mindset. I had the scarcity mindset, and I did not believe in the abundance of the universe and that we could all win. And so reading that book was a turning point for me. I thought, why in the world would this rich guy want me to be rich? That means less money for him.
Right.
And so after reading that book, it was just such a mindset change for me. And in the back, it had a list of every book that at that time Robert Kiyosaki had written and that Donald Trump had written. And I said to myself, I'm going to start checking these off one by one. And I did. I sure enough did. And Jen, I spent probably a decade reading books before I took the first action.
Really?
Yeah. A lot of people believe, that you should be able to just learn a little bit and then go and make a lot of money. Well, I spent 10 years growing my roots. And that's not the best way, right? Like you really got to get out there and do stuff. But for me, I had to grow that root system before I was willing to, step into the investment world. And then 10 years later, I finally did. But that book was key in my life.
Interesting. I may have to check it out. I do love me some Robert Kiyosaki. By the way, have you ever played his cash flow game?
Yeah, so that was one of the next things I did. It was like the CDs that you could stick in your computer at the time. Yeah. And they were so expensive. They were like $100 and something. I could never have afforded that. I found it at a thrift store. Yeah. So that's how I got the cash flow games and started playing those. And then that's when Bigger Pockets first got started, and I started listening in on all that stuff. So
I just bought cash flow for my husband for Christmas, and it is so funny how it is absolutely parallel to how you run your business. Because there's certain things that he does where I'm like, eh. And then he did them in the game as well. Because as soon as we get like a large chunk in, he wants to pay a bunch of stuff off, where I'd rather carry a little bit more debt for a while. And man, it bit him in the butt. Every time he would pay something off, I would just zoom right past him and get out of the rat race. So, and I also want to talk really quick on, you're talking about why would someone who's rich want me to be rich also, because that would take away from them. And you and I were in Vegas together at the Legacy Summit with our man, Tim Bratz. So shout out to Tim. And they even were talking about it. And it was such a great reminder that when people think that, they think wealth is like a pie. And when you take a piece of pie, that doesn't leave enough for other people, where everybody can have pie. It's really not that way. And to hear that again, he had some amazing speakers at this conference in Vegas. And, gosh, it's so true. And the abundance is out there for everyone. So Jennifer, you and I are going to be besties, because I just love how you went right to that, because that is how I live my life. And, you have to open your eyes, and there's abundance everywhere, and you have to learn to be accepting of it. So thank you for sharing that.
And we had to learn to get to that point, right? It's a survival instinct for us to think, okay, I have to have this to survive. And if you have it, then I don't have it. But the world doesn't operate like that anymore. We're not out scavenging for food anymore.
Right.
So
yes, exactly. All right. You're so awesome. All right. The first A in badass is advice. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Well, okay. So speaking of Tim Bratz, I had to mention one of I don't know if this is a Tim Bratz original or if it came from somewhere else, but one of the things that he says, it's in one of his YouTube videos, is there's 2 ways to own the biggest building in town. And one is to tear all the buildings around you down. And 2 is to build the biggest building in town. And I think about that, and I share that with people all the time whenever I hear the scarcity mindset, because we don't have to step on others to get above them. We don't have to tear others down or be competitive. Like, we can all win together, ships rise together. And so that's one of my favorite things that I'm always telling myself or telling to other people.
That Tim Bratz, he's so good.
He's something.
He is something. All right. The D in badass is drive. What drives Jennifer to be successful?
I have like certain KPIs and net worth and cash flow goals, and all those are great. Like, they keep me moving the needle forward, but ultimately, like, I just want to do the best I can. I feel like it's my duty to give 100% every single day, to live out my purpose. And so that's what drives me. It's just, I can't halfway do it today. And, I do take time to rest and whatnot, but I want to give 100%. I feel like that's my duty.
And I think that's reflective in your business too, because you talked about going to the city where you built the storage facility and said, well, what do you need? And then you were fighting the people around it who were, so disappointed you were taking down beautiful farmland, but then you have turned around and become friends again. So it is very evident in everything you do. So wonderful. All right. The second A in badass is aspiration. I'm a big goal setter. So what is a goal you're currently working on?
So yeah, one of the things that I'm currently working on is I want to acquire my first storage facility that somebody else built. So I know how to build storage, and I know how to do land development, but I'm still learning and working on acquiring other facilities because I feel like we can grow faster that way. And so I'm looking at a deal every single day. One of my things I have to do is underwrite one deal every single day. So this year, I will buy somebody else's storage facility, and I've already got another development in the pipeline too for self-storage, but I want to acquire an existing one. That's a goal of mine that I'm going to do this year.
And how do you find these self-storage facilities?
Just being a part of that community and letting people know, like, I'm looking to buy something. You're going to get referrals. Brokers know that you're a qualified buyer. You're going to get on their email list. And then I'm just constantly searching, different places to see, even like LoopNet, stuff like that. Self-storage comes through there. And you can even set up a search on Google for certain keywords. Whenever that keyword hits Google, you'll get a notification by email. And that's been helpful.
Gotcha. Do you know the name Stacy Rossetti?
Yes, I do.
So I had her on this podcast, and she's a dear friend. We know a whole bunch of people from Fortune Builders. Did you happen to do Fortune Builders?
I didn't, but I've heard of it.
Yeah. So we had all these connections, and everyone kept saying, you got to meet Stacy Rossetti. So yeah, she is fantastic. And so anyway, I just wanted to throw that name out there if you hadn't heard of her.
Yeah.
All right. The first S in badass is systems. What systems do you have in place to help you achieve success?
Yeah, so I'm working on putting in better systems. I'm reading the book Traction right now, but the way I do things is I figure out what I'm good at and what I enjoy doing, and then I try to delegate the rest of it. So if somebody else does the things I don't like doing, what I don't enjoy doing, and if I focus on that $1,000 an hour thing, what I'm passionate about, then, things tend to work pretty smoothly. And I go to work every day. I show up.
That's awesome. And that Traction is a great book. Is it Gino Wick? I know it's Wickman.
Yeah, Gino Wickman.
Gino Wickman. I went through that and did it. Vance and I went through it as if it was a textbook and literally stopped and wrote everything out. And so that's a great one to get focused on where you're going, get the traction, exactly what the title is. All right. The last S in badass is success. What does success mean to Jennifer Perkins?
Yeah, so that has meant a lot of different things at different points in my life. But for me now, it just means, doing my best, having a balanced life, always moving the needle forward and doing the best for the people around me. Well,
I am so appreciative that you tried to knock that glass of wine out of my hands and then apologize and me not even realize. And then you apologize the next day because it was so great meeting you. And in this industry and in that circle of people, there's so many men. So I was like, ooh, another lady. And it's a Jennifer. She must be perfect. So I really appreciate you coming over and introducing yourself to me. You have been fantastic. How can people find you online, say on social media?
Yeah, so I am a middle-aged woman, so I am on Facebook. I do have Instagram and LinkedIn, but as a millennial, the Facebook tends to make the most sense to me. So that's the best way to reach me.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so very much. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. And that is all. Thank you for listening. And we will catch you on the next episode. Now go out there and share your badassery. And don't forget, make it a great day. Take care. Bye-bye. Whoop, whoop.
Thank you for listening to RAIN, the Real Estate Investor Growth Network. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. If you need more badassery, you can follow Jen Josie by visiting therealjenjosie.com or become a member of RAIN by registering on rainmastermind.com.